Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to uh, really discuss what I consider a landmark study in the field of exercise science, and it demonstrates the effectiveness of high intensity exercise and the potential of it to improve outcomes and be much more efficient. In other words, take a whole lot less time than uh, we think is necessary to improve outcomes in health and fitness and wellness. So, many of you heard of the Tabata Protocol, and Professor Tabata in 1996 did publish a study comparing the effects of high intensity exercise, high intensity interval exercise, versus more of a lower intensity or moderate intensity aerobic program, and he collected the outcomes that he collected was VO2 max, which is how we measure maximal oxygen uptake. It's considered uh, the way we measure cardiovascular health and fitness, and then anaerobic capacity, which is maximal accumulated oxygen deficit. So the ability to exercise at high intensities that is anaerobic, meaning oxygen is not the uh, energy source or providing energy for that energy system. So anaerobic capacity, of course, a higher anaerobic capacity would be a good thing. So anaerobic capacity is measured, and then aerobic capacity, or VO2 max, in these participants. So the study went on 6 weeks. There were two groups. The first group was a kind of a moderate intensity or moderate endurance exercise group. They exercised 60 minutes, 5 days a week over the 6 weeks, and they exercised at roughly 70% of their VO2 max level. So again, they did their VO2 max before the 6 weeks, and then of course took it afterwards as a pre and post test. Um, and then so those participants in the moderate intensity, again, 5 days per week, 60 minutes per day, the improvement in VO2 max was roughly 5 milliliters per kg per minute, so 5 mLs per kg per minute. So that's a pretty good improvement, really. About a 10% improvement in VO2 max, but their anaerobic capacity did not improve. Okay, and then the second group exercised on a very high intensity training protocol. Okay, and these were moderately trained participants, so it's moderately trained students in the physical education program at that university and in Japan. And so the exhaustive intermittent high intensity group, they trained with 20 seconds of all out intensity followed by 10 seconds of rest. Okay, so 10 seconds of activity, or 20 seconds of high intensity, 10 seconds of rest. And they did 7 to 8 sets of that. Okay, so roughly, so each set would last 30 seconds, 20 seconds of high intensity, 10 seconds of rest. So they were exercising extremely hard during that 20 seconds. It was all out. Um, and um, and then they rested for 10 seconds. Okay, so roughly 4 minutes of activity, 5 days per week, in 6 weeks. At the end of the training phase, they too measured their VO2 max, and their VO2 max was 7 mLs per kg per minute, compared to the 5 mLs per kg per minute in the other group. And then their anaerobic capacity increased by 28%. Okay, versus the more moderate or lower intensity exercise that was much longer, they showed no real significant improvements in anaerobic capacity. So let's look at this from a time standpoint. The lower intensity group exercised 60 minutes, 5 days a week. That's 5 hours a week. Okay, so 5 hours a week of activity for 6 weeks. That's 30 hours of exercise, if my math is correct. Okay, 30 hours of exercise versus, okay, versus the A high intensity group, again, they exercise 20 seconds all out, 10 seconds of rest. 20 seconds all out, 10 seconds of rest. And so the second group improved greater in VO2 max and a much greater improvement in anaerobic capacity of 28%. And we would expect that because the group that trained high intensity was training anaerobically, right? At a very high intensity. Therefore, they were just exercising all out 20 seconds with 10 seconds rest. But the time, back to the time component, the first group exercised 30 hours over that 6 weeks. The high intensity group that were able to increase in VO2 max greater, and their anaerobic capacity increased 28% versus virtually none in the other group. Um, and or it says did not increase significantly um, in the first group. But the time in the high intensity group was 4 minutes, 5 days a week. That's 20 minutes. So about 20 minutes per week times 6 weeks. So that would be 120 minutes. So 2 hours of total exercise, thereabouts, versus 30 hours to get greater improvements in outcomes. Okay? So what does this tell us? To me, and again, this is just one study. There's been other studies published. This tells me the value of high intensity exercise um, and strength training as well. Strength training, we typically are under load, our time under tension is probably in that 20 to 45-second range, followed by rest intervals. Okay, although I don't think you're going to get your heart rate as high doing strength training typically, but this demonstrates the power of high intensity exercise. Okay, one caveat to high intensity exercise: you do need to make sure that you are, cardiovascularly cleared to perform high intensity exercise. My personal application of this Tabata protocol is I I'm only doing Tabata aerobic exercise actually 1 to 2 days per week because I'm strength training 2 days per week, and I just find that for me and my recovery space that's needed, I can't do it more than 2 days per week. And again, it's just 4 minutes, right? But I mean, it is all out effort for 4 minutes. So 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. There are apps that will help you with the timer. You can set a timer. What I do is I get on my elliptical. I crank the intensity all the way up. And then even whenever I'm supposed to be in low intensity, I'm moving the elliptical fairly non-intensely, if you will, but I am moving it. And then in the 20 seconds all out, I mean, I'm cranking the elliptical with my arms, my legs, as hard as I can. And so what I'm finding is that I'm able to increase the distance that I cover under that 4 minutes of Tabata. Over if I do it 2 days per week, I could probably do it three, but with my 2 days of strength training, I think it might be more practical maybe to do some lower intensity aerobic exercise instead of doing another Tabata program. But I mean, you could experiment with it. But the whole take home message here is that intensity, in many ways, intensity is more important than volume. And certainly there's a trade off there. You can't train hard all the time with super high levels of intensity. And you shouldn't train with super high volumes forever either. So, again, that's where you want to periodize your training. But right now, that's what's working really well for me. And then again, I'm very advanced strength training. But I am wanting to push my VO2 max up higher, especially as I age. I want to make sure that every system in my body is optimal. Again, that's what I'm doing is 2 days a week of strength training. And then 2 days per week of Tabata. If I'm feeling like I'm not up to do two of Tabata, then I might drop one and then maybe do a lower intensity session just to facilitate some recovery. But again, these 4 minutes are intense. They're it's a lot of fun, really. to do. And I think an elliptical or a cycle ergometer or the Airdyne bike uh, may be the best approach for this type of training, because you can add intensity to it. Um, I mean, I guess if you're a runner, you could do it at the track. You could do 20-second runs followed by a 10-second maybe walk, 10-second, 20-second run. Um, but anyway, wanted to share that with you today. The power of intensity. When you're training hard, it just doesn't. You don't need as much volume. And I wanted to share this with you today. Again, it's an older study, but I think it was a kind of the beginning of us at least being able to look at the effect, the impact of high intensity exercise. So that's it for today. If you have questions, comments, please subscribe, like, share, send to your friends. I'll do my best to provide you the best information I can on the science and practice of strength training and exercise and fitness. Talk to you soon.